Hello and welcome. We are looking today at the Diehard Gamefan magazine. We are on volume 2 this time, issue 1. So we're getting here into the second volume of this crazy magazine, and on this cover here, looks like they are featuring the Atari Jaguar along with Cybermorph. I am trying a different format today. Hopefully you will find this a bit more enjoyable than my previous episodes that I've done on this here. I had a comment from someone that suggested using the screen recording app. So I'm going to see how this goes and see if this is a better format. It's at the very least, I feel like if you're watching it on your phone, you should be able to kind of follow along here more with a more bigger picture in the kind of vertical view here. So we'll see how this goes. Definitely be open to any feedback if you appreciate this style or not. But let's get into it here. So again, Diehard Gamefan. And we're also looking here for the Sega section for Eternal Champions, ToeJam Mineral 2, Lost Vikings, Joe and Mac, Lunar, Brutal. And then for the Super Nintendo, we're looking at Lester the Unlikely, Lawnmower Man, Mega Man X, Fatal Fury 2, and T2. And it looks like we got some exclusives here also for the Mega Drive for Panorama Cotton, Shining Force 2, and Vey. For the Super Famicom, Ninja Warriors 2, Illusion of Gaia, R-Type 2. And for the PC Engine, Flash Hiders, and Dracula X. And also for Game Fan Sports, we're looking at Madden 3DO, Montana NFL, and NHL CD. Okay, and so here we're looking at this RoboCop versus Terminator ad, which is a pretty cool game from back then. Okay, so here we are with their Dave Haverson's editorial zone. So welcome to the second year of GameFan and the best Christmas for gamers everywhere. Some lucky New Yorkers and San Franciscans will be enjoying Jaguars this holiday season, while the rest of us will get to spend an extra happy new year with the big cat. Others will enjoy a healthy offering of Genesis, Gunstar Heroes, Shinobi 3, Stimpy's Invention, and Super NES titles, ActRaiser 2, Super Empire, Clay Fighter, while Sega owners will see the best games yet, Sonic CD, Jurassic Park, Lunar, Sylphid, etc. Those of you with a talent for plating may land on a 3DO. Either way, video games, at least good ones, are gifts that keep on giving. We have provided you with a handy Christmas list on page 26 to make things easier when Grandma asks you what you want. Just make a copy, circle the appropriate games, and send her on her way. Now, you won't have to get a tin of Danish cookies. Immediately following the holiday season, it's on to the CES to see what 1994 brings. There is so much on the horizon. Now for 94 will be Sony's PlayStation, Atari's Jaguar, and more from 3DO, Sega's DSP attachment, and later Saturn. And Nintendo will have more SFX games and perhaps a color handheld, and the Lynx may make a major comeback. So once again, the stage is set. One thing is for sure, we won't be bored. And it seems there is something for everyone in every pocketbook. And last but not least, earlier this month, an ad for a game copier was submitted to us here at GameFan. We, of course, immediately rejected it, but the fact that such an ad even exists deeply disturbs me. Game copiers, they call them storage devices now for cover, are the most uncool creations that have ever been, and they pose a serious threat to our industry. Avoid them like a plague. Not to end on a negative note, I am looking forward to our second year, the holidays, and the show, and of course 1994's video gaming's true breakthrough year. See you next month. So yeah, so there was game copiers already coming out back then. You know, there's always been a concern with piracy in video games, and right, I mean, I get it, right? Obviously, right? I mean, I'm sure you're a company, you don't want your stuff just pirated out there and all, but what's interesting is that a lot of these devices and all ended up being why we have like emulation and certain, games that have been able to be preserved nowadays. So just kind of interesting, right? How we kind of depend on them to an extent, or similar kind of devices and all, right? And also that we can have the ability to dump our ROMs and things like that, right? So that eventually we can continue preserving games when they're not being re-released and such. We have a few ads here. So for Dragon's Lair, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighter. This one's, for both the Genesis and the Super Nintendo. And T2, a sneak peek of what's to come. Yeah, T2 was such a great movie. But geez, by this point, it was almost like 3 years old. That's nuts. Atari Jaguar, they're starting to come out with their ads, so we're showing up the competition bit by bit. So they were really trying to hit hard with the whole, that they're a 64-bit console. And yeah, I mean, kind of technically, but not really also from my understanding. But yeah, they were really trying to hit home on the bit wars there. And, because they were 64-bit, right, it made them seem to like that. Seems like they were hoping that would really make them stand out. But here we have the Hocus Pocus section. So there are some cheats there. Street Fighter 2 ad. Some more cheats. This one for the Sega Sonic CD. I could be wrong, but I want to say I think I tried doing this several times. And I don't think I could ever quite get it. Maybe I should try it out some point here. Oh, and some... If you happen to have still a Pro Action Replay code, do those things still even work if you have the original hardware? But there's some codes there. I never did mess around with these, like the Pro Action or the Game Genie or those kind of devices. Never did mess around with those. Super Turrican on the Super Nintendo. I never played this one, but I really like the one on the Genesis, which I'm pretty sure comes up in a later issue. Some other bonuses. I don't think I ever did try to unlock these either. Art of Fighting. And Spider-Man and X-Men. I never did play these games. Are these games any fun? I'm kind of in a bit of a Marvel fix right now. Ever since going through that Marvel Cosmic Invasion, I've been kind of thinking about going back and playing some old school like Marvel games. I wonder if these are any good. But here's the top 10, or most wanted in top 10, at least for the readers of this magazine here. So top 10 for number 1 was Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the Super Nintendo, and number 1 for most wanted was Sonic CD. .3DO advertisement there. But yeah, this ad here though, so it looks like almost seems like a page missing here. But this ad here for the 3DO Madden game, which doesn't play too half bad. I've played this version through emulation, and it's not actually half bad. It's I mean, it nowadays, I mean, it can look a bit clunky and all, but it's you kind of can think about back in the day and all. It actually is pretty impressive. And so then here we have for the picks for the holidays. So I don't know how clean that looks there on the screen. So I'm going off of my phone here. And so this looks a little small and blurry for me to read. But hopefully it comes up on the screen there okay. But yeah, it looks like they're just kind of going over some suggestions on what to get for each system. Yeah, 1993 was a pretty good year overall. I kind of felt that this year went to the Sega Genesis, in my opinion. But I somewhat fairly recently, so I've been going through the years in gaming, and so I went through 1993 and 1994. But 1994, I definitely felt was a year for the Super Nintendo. But both of them were just excellent. And I had here for Lunar. Such a great game. And then all the Dracula games that were coming out. So there were the ones on the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo, which I believe were more or less the same. They were kind of like an action sort of game. But then the one on the Sega CD, which utilized like CGI graphics with almost like digitized characters and full motion video. And that one played very differently. And for the time, it was actually fairly impressive graphic wise. But I think I've talked about that game already before, but there's the ad for him. All right, and so here we go with Viewpoint. And so, this is going to be kind of small for me to read. So we're just going to experiment here and see how this goes. So for Skid's pick here, so I can't believe it. My pick of the month is an Atari game. Will this happen often? If Cybermorph is any indication, then I guess so. This is one of those games that takes a week to beat, so I really feel like you guys will get your money's worth when you buy your Jaguar. You are getting one, aren't you? Oh, geez. Sergeant Gamer's pick. Atari scores with its introduction of the Jaguar and Cybermorph. 64-bit gaming is here and announced its presence with authority. The lucky 50,000 Jaguar owners will be playing this for months to come. $225. That's it. The next generation is here. 50,000. Was that all the Jaguar sold though? Kay Lee's pick. So believe it or not, this month I'm not picking a fighting game. My pick is Lunar because it is to RPGs what Street Fighter 2 is to fighting games. It's not. I'm not normally an RPG freak, but this game kept me glued from start to finish. Was it the music, the graphics, the story? I don't know. But now I know how Eastorm feels. Until now, I just thought he was weird. And then Kid Fans pick. So I got to agree with Skid Marks and the Mexican food on this one and go with Cybermorph. I am now a believer of the 3D genre. Until now, games like this were as chunky as my chili. But now, with the introduction of the Jaguar, games like this are as smooth as my guacamole. Alrighty. My only hope is that they keep it up. Because if I can get just one game this good every month, I'll be a happy guy. The next generation is going to be fun. Oh my gosh. So they were really all about the Jaguar, huh? And if you've been following like YouTube media to any extent, like video game media and all that, you've probably seen the angry video game nerds video about the Cybermorph and just basically how he just rips the game apart. That is more of an accurate representation of Cybermorph than the way they're painting it here. There's actually a really funny story, and I'll kind of get into it a little bit more as I'm reading the review for this game here, that I'll kind of touch base on a little bit later. And actually, I think I've already talked about it a bit, but it's just cracking me up the way they're talking so highly about this game as Cybermorph. But again, we'll get into that here in a bit. But they reviewed Eternal Champions, which this one here on the Sega Genesis, I remember we rented it and I didn't think too highly of it. It was definitely, Street Fighter 2 just has a certain feel to it and all this feels very smooth, very responsive, more polished, and just felt right. And I mean, there's some games on the and some of the SNK fighters who also were starting to get that down too, also. And a lot of them ended up being pretty good, especially like the King of Fighter series and Samurai Shodown and all. But Eternal Champions was calling itself a Street Fighter 2 killer, but it was not. It has some interesting concepts to it and all, and I like the story, the setting, and how like all these characters are from different time periods, and so that was all interesting. But the way you pull off the moods is very clunky. The movement feels a bit stiff. The graphics, while not horrible, they just, I don't know, the characters are cool, but they're not like too inspired. And the music, if I recall right on this version, just wasn't that great. So just overall, not that great of a fighting game for how they were really hyping it up. And yeah, I mean, the scores kind of reflect that here. I mean, even like, these, the Gamefan tended to be a bit Sega biased, and even then they didn't think too highly of it. But I'll just read one review here. So for Kaylee, so he's kind of the fighting game guy. And so I don't think Capcom will have to worry much about Sega's SF2 killer because Eternal Champions isn't even in the same galaxy as Street Fighter. I have to admit that the animation on the characters is very nice, but the graphics are real grainy, and the music, let's just say silence is golden. Balance problems, you want balance problems? You get only one chance at the boss, yet you can beat everyone else by taking off energy and backing off or simply repeating moves. This game still needs work. Yeah. Yeah, so much about it just didn't feel right. And, well, yeah, I do agree with those sentiments there. But here's a game that, okay, so I knew this game was going to be coming up here soon, and I wanted to kind of highlight this game a little bit. It's, for me, it's one of the hidden gems on the Sega Genesis. It's not a super great game. I just felt it was just a really fun, colorful platformer, kind of done in the style of Sonic. So this is for High Seas Havoc. So I'll read this review here. So with Havoc, Data East successfully enters the lofty, small character action platform genre with the likes of Sonic, Sparkster, Socket, and the rest of the boys. Enhancing this game are features like mega character animation, sampled sound effects, and extra detail in both the enemies and the backgrounds. High Seas is also a bit harder than the rest, but definitely worth the effort. Yeah, I just remember we had a really fun time with this game, and it's really colorful. I was really surprised by the color usage on this game for a Genesis game, and it kind of plays like Sonic, right? Where your character starts off a little slow, and then he gains momentum as you keep moving forward. And there's like some hills and all that he can kind of go up and down. He's not quite as fast as Sonic, and they're not quite as, and the game isn't quite as good as the Sonic games, but it's a fun alternative if you like that kind of style of platformer. That's good. So, like, how Nintendo had, like, their Mario clones. Well, Sonic also has some Sonic clones. And so, again, we talked about it, I think, a few issues back, the Socket game. And this game also here, High Seas Havoc. So, I just remember having a lot of fun with these games here. And I just don't ever really hear about them anymore. But I thought they were decent. But yeah, High Seas Havoc. And then there was Joe and Mac. I don't know, again, how this appears here on the screen there, but feel free to pause if you want, if you wanted to kind of read, more in detail these reviews here. But Lunar, I did want to go over these here. I already talked about it before, just how awesome this game was. So I wanted to read these reviews here. So for Lunar. So Lunar is far and away the best RPG I've ever played in English. Everything is perfect. The graphics, the fighting engine, the music, and the story. Working Designs knows how to translate RPGs and has converted this game so well that it is better than the original. Set aside a week this Christmas and escape with Lunar. Perfect timing too, kind of perfect timing that I'm reading this here, as this was, I guess, looks like the Christmas issue. And we're 2 days away now from Christmas, but kind of more or less within the right timing. God, and this was 1994, so this would have been what? 31 years ago? Jesus. That's crazy. But Lunar is a well-conceived and executed RPG that will challenge even the best RPG players. Working Designs did well to decide and pick up Lunar and translate it for the American market. With the thin schedule of releases in the genre on the Sega CD, Lunar is going to be a welcome change for CD owners and one of the best games on the system in 1993. Yeah, for sure. And Kay Lee said, so this is one of my favorite RPGs. If you can imagine a Sega CD version of Final Fantasy II, one of the best, and so he's talking, so Final Fantasy II, so really meaning Final Fantasy IV, then you've got a pretty good idea of what kind of game Lunar is. Lunar has a long and fascinating quest and plenty of catch-you-off-guard situations to keep you interested in coming back for more. Combine this with great graphics and an incredible soundtrack, and you've got a game that was well worth it. And let's see, in the next one here, so Sega CD owners and RPG gamers are in store for a big surprise. Working Designs has translated the greatest RPG of all time for the Sega CD, and it is truly amazing. Imagine Final Fantasy on the Sega CD, but with better graphics, music, and one of the best stories ever told. And you have Lunar. It is also one of the longest RPGs that I have ever played on the Sega CD. If you're a local owner of a Sega CD, buy it and prepare to be blown away to RPG heaven. Yeah, I've already talked about it, so I don't want to spend too much more time on it, but just an excellent game and so many fond memories of that game. That soundtrack is so still etched in my memory. Still one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. Absolutely love this game. And even though we've gone like the remake of it, and on the remake improves on a lot of different things of the game, but I still really like the Sega CD version. And I feel like if you're getting into Lunar now, right, more than likely you're going to come across a new version that has come out recently, the that came out earlier this year with the Lunar 1 and 2 package, which is excellent, right? I think it's a really well done repackaging of that game. But if you really like Lunar, or the first one, try to seek out this game, because it's, I mean, it's the same game more or less, right, as far as like the story and all. And and in a lot of ways this one, the remake, I should say, adds more things, right? And it looks better and all that. But I still feel like this one has a certain feel to it, though, and all that the remake doesn't quite capture. And that's kind of weird to explain. But I think a lot of it has to do with the soundtrack and all, and also the story is a bit more streamlined. And I actually kind of, in ways, kind of prefer this one over the remake. I kind of go back and forth between the two, but that's what I'm saying, right? And don't sleep on the Sega CD version. I know it's probably very hard to obtain if you're trying to get like a physical copy, but also, or if you're just not familiar with emulation. But if you really enjoy the first or the Lunar remake that came out recently, yeah, and you're curious about going back and checking out older games and all, definitely try to seek this one out. I think you'll still appreciate it. But let's see. They also reviewed this Soldier of Fortune. This is a top-down shooter from Spectrum Holobyte. This one came out both on the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo. I never did play this game though, so I'm not too familiar with it. Let's see. This is one of the better two-player overhead shooting games that I've seen for this Genesis, or any other system for that matter. Although I like cute characters in games, I really enjoy the more serious type of games like Soldier of Fortune. The graphics have a high level of detail, and the action is non-stop and really rocks. If you're into Smash TV style of games, you'll love Soldier of Fortune. I want to check this game out at some point. I feel like it could be a good time. But then we also got Toe Jam and Earl. So this is the sequel, Toe Jam and Earl 2. I think I forgot what it was called, but I think it has like a sub name. But this game here, I didn't really get into much into the first one. Actually, I don't really care much for the first one, but this one, we rented this one, and we really got into this one here. I had a really fun time with it. And even though it seems to be the one that doesn't quite get as much recognition, though. But let's see. So Toe Jam and Earl 2. Let's see. Toe Jam. Well, I don't know what they're meaning there, but Toe Jam and Earl 2. Oh, okay. I see. Oh my God. Toe Jam. Maybe that's what they're trying to say. I've been waiting for the sequel for some time, and I'm ready to put a little more funk into my game playing diet. Toe Jam and Earl 2 has you trying to rid Funkatron of the human menace amidst some of the best graphics, sound, and unique gameplay that you'll ever encounter in cartridge gaming. Like the original, Toe Jam and Earl 2 is a must-buy for all Genesis owners. And yeah, so this one changes up the formula, where the first one was kind of like a top-down roguelike game, and this one here is the side-scrolling, kind of like platformer, I guess you can say. Where the first one, though, you're aliens that are on Earth. This one, you're back on your home planet, and then the humans have invaded your planet. So it's kind of fun, and you're kind of going through the levels, right, trying to capture the humans. But it's a lot of fun and really colorful graphics and, cool soundtrack. And yeah, I did have fun with this one. This is a game that I am a fan of, unlike the first one. And definitely recommend you checking it out if you're, checking out the Sega Genesis's library. I don't know. I've said this a handful of times already, but I don't know if that Sega Genesis compilation is still out there to buy. I just remember Sega announced that they were shutting it down some time ago, but because otherwise it would be on there. But let's see. Oh, and here's a Ronald McDonald game. So Treasure Land. So this game was, it looks like published by Interplay, but it was developed by Treasure. So let's see, I'll just read this one here. So I can honestly say that I have never even considered spending time playing a game based on a nauseating McDonald's characters. Treasure has managed to change that overnight with the release of Treasure Land. Ronald takes you into some of the best action platforming game around. When the guys that did Gunstar Heroes are responsible, when the guys, oh my God, I can't read. Ronald takes you into some of the best action platform gaming around. And when the guys that did Gunstar Heroes are responsible, a good time is guaranteed for all. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it's a fun game. I like it. And then we get into Dracula X. So this is the one that came out on the Turbo CD. So we know it now as Castlevania Rondo of Blood, and also the prequel to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. But Dracula X is the perfect CD game. The graphics, music, length, and difficulty level are all perfect. And being able to find so many secret levels make this game totally replayable. It's too bad it comes at a time when the duo is dead. Games like this would have made the Turbo a contender. Games this good are 1 in 100 these days. Konami excels on the PC Engine CD. So absolutely brilliant. If the Turbo TTI, I forgot what that stood for, but it's basically the Turbo Graphics or the Turbo Duo. Had this game 3 years ago, they would have been a major player in America. It says layer, but I'm pretty sure that when I say player. Dracula X has everything you can hope for in a video game, a long quest, fantastic graphics, and special effects and gameplay. Like all of the Castlevania games, this is outstanding. For those of you that don't own the Duo PC Engine CD, there is not going to be a better reason to buy one. And next review. So let's see. This is the best action game that I've played on the PC Engine. The sheer variety in this game is amazing. There are plenty of huge, challenging levels with unbelievable bosses, and the music is perfect with its highly orchestrated version of classic Castlevania tunes. This game is better than Castlevania 4, which was my favorite Super Nintendo action game. This is now my favorite Konami game. And I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. Dracula X is the best Castlevania since the incredible Super Nintendo Castlevania 4. The PC Engine CD game has everything you would expect from Konami: huge bosses, tons of scrolls, and the famed Castlevania music, brought to you in true Q sound that sends chills down your spine every time I hear it. If you own a Duo, buy the import. You won't regret it. Q sound. So Q sound was kind of a sound technology that they were using on some games back then. I remember a lot of Capcom games had it, like in a lot of their fighters, and I believe some Sega or some CD games. And it was just, if I recall right, it was just sort of like a style of surround sound, I believe. I'm not quite sure, but I do recall that being advertised on some games. But then some other games here. So Super Battle Tank, The Lawnmower Man, and Lester the Unlikely. And then Lufia. So Lufia, I've been curious. I'd be curious to want to check this game out. Well, they didn't seem to think too highly of it, but I feel like I've seen like other, like I guess as time has gone on, they seem to be. I've heard some good stuff about them, so I'd be curious to check it out. Terminator 2 was like it was like a Lycan game, but I don't know if you can use like the super scope on these here. It's funny. So they were talking about how like these games are very basic and one dimensional. Um, but we kind of miss like on games nowadays. Okay, so Cybermorph. So this shit's hilarious. It's Again, I feel like this would add more context if you have watched that review from the Angry Video Game Nerd. It came out some years ago, a little while back. But this was and I'm going to add a little bit more to this also, right? But for right now, this is in the moment, right, when the Atari Jaguar was new. So try to keep that in mind. And then also something else happened on this review, right? So, which I'll get into here in a bit. But so the first guy says, so I can't believe this is the Jags pack-in. What a deal. This is such a great game. The color is phenomenal. The control is the best I have ever felt, and it will take weeks to beat. Each level is like a mini game in itself. If this is the first generation, then the Jaguar is my system. Atari, wherever you've been, it's nice to have you back. Next review. Easily one of the best original Jaguar games. Cybermorph is a 3D texture map tour de force with over 50 levels of real-world shooting that will have you engrossed in the action for weeks. Retrieving pods has never been this fun. This game is the free pack-in with the system, and there has never been a better one. Atari has made me a believer. Has made a believer of me. Jaguar is on the prowl, and the world of gaming will never be the same. I must admit, I did not expect Jaguar games to be this good. I'm a big Star Fox fan, and this game takes that idea and perspective to a new level. You can go anywhere you want, before, during, and after each mission, to the point of almost feeling like you have really been there. It's hard to explain, but this game takes the world interaction to new heights. I hope this is the shape of things to come. And last one, I can't believe this masterpiece is a freebie. Cybermorph has got to be one of the best, most incredible games I've played today. Not only can you go anywhere at this time, but the graphics and smooth real-time environments are truly mind-blowing. Cybermorph has 50 worlds to experience, and each level takes intense study to beat. Just imagine a smoother, more detailed Star Fox in a real-world environment, and that's all yours to explore. And you've got Cybermorph, the game every development house will be copying for years to come. I'm still blown away that I'm playing a game on an Atari system. So, Cybermorph, this could, obviously this is subjective, right? And all, but Cybermorph is a horrible game. It's not very good. You can play it if you get like the Atari, I think it was like the Atari 50th anniversary collection that came out a few years ago, which is actually a really good collection. A lot of great, like if you're really into like retro gaming and all, I feel like that one's worth owning, not only for the games, but it has just a lot of like extra content on it, like developer interviews and things like that, right? But anyways, this game is on there, so you can, if you wanted to check it out, that's one way you can play it. But it's a horrible game. It's not that great. So when I'm reading this review, I mean, in their defense, it was truly something else back then, right? And I mean, if you think about it, we've been so stuck on a 2D dimension, and so the thought of just like being able to explore, a 3D environment, right, where you're going up, down, left, right, and you're not restricted to a more streamlined gameplay loop, it was truly mind blowing back then. And so again, in their defense, that's that. And this is before like Mario 64 came out, before Tomb Raider came out. And so this was very new to us. And so I can only imagine that would have been had I played Cybermorph back in those days, I'm pretty sure I would have been really excited about it. But when we look back on it and all, then this was why, fortunately or unfortunately, either way, I guess it can go either way, but why fifth generation games sometimes get a bad rep now, because at the time it was really revolutionary. But a lot of these games just, in a lot of people's eyes, didn't age very well. And I will personally say for Cybermorph, like I said, it's a pretty horrible game. But at the time, again, in that moment, it was really exciting. So in their defense, I can kind of see where they're coming from on that. But yeah, we'll talk a little bit about more when we're actually reading the actual full review. But then they also had here for the 2D with the Mad Dog McCree game. So it's like the full motion video Lycan game. And advertisement here for that Soldiers of Fortune game. And the Adventures of Monitor. And his family. And then here we go with the Toe Jam and Earl Panic. Okay, that's what it was called. Panic on Funkotron. Yeah, really colorful graphics. Them now being on an alien planet. Just, I felt like it gave the developers just a lot of creativity on how to design these worlds. Yeah, just remember I had a blast with this game. I do remember I liked it a lot. Yeah, like this right here. I remember this stage was pretty cool with the scrolling and all in the background, and yeah, just really colorful. But basically, you get all these crazy humans, right? Like this lady with the camera, she's just constantly going around taking pictures of you, and just a bunch of weird humans, right? Trying to mess with your day and invading your space in your alien world. Um, I thought it was really creative. Like I said, I did enjoy this one here. And you throw like these bottles, if I remember right, at these humans to capture them. I think you gotta hit them, like certain humans, you gotta hit them a certain amount of times, right? So you can capture them. And the music, has like the cool kind of rap music to it, which fits the game pretty well. And then Eternal Champions. In its defense, I mean, it did use like the outside of Street Fighter 2. It was one of the few games that really utilized the 6-button pad controller on the Sega Genesis. As you kind of the same, right? You have your weak, medium, and strong attacks for punches and kicks. So here it just kind of goes over what like their special moves are and all, but like some of the moves were done kind of like in a weird way, and that's why it kind of threw me off a bit when I was playing this game. I think they talk about the Sega CD version later of this game, which was actually a pretty good game there, but yeah, this particular version just not so great. Balloonar. All right, so this one here, this is the final full review that they'll do of this game here. So Sega CD owners Star for RPG should be playing Lunar the Silver Star about the time this issue comes out. So how do you like it? If you're like thousands of RPG players in Japan, then you're probably having quite a great time. Believe it or not, Sega of America thinks that RPGs aren't viable in today's market, and bringing them out is a hassle for developers. So if you want to see more, drop them a line to you, they will listen. We have covered Lunar now 3 times, so if you are a regular reader, you are probably familiar with Lunar by now. If not, then let me tell you. God, there's a lot of like spelling errors. If you're into RPGs and own a Sega CD, this is it. In fact, along with the original East and Phantasy Star 2, I would have to say that Lunar is one of the best RPGs ever. The music alone is reason enough to own this game. It is almost magical. Besides that, the fighting engine and storyline are among the best in the genre, and the translation, both for voice and text, has been done to perfectly by Working Designs. Working Designs' next CD title will be Vey, another great RPG. So get ready for more of the same very soon. These RPGs, as far as I can see, are the best reason to own a Sega CD. Let Sega of America know that, and more will surely follow. Maybe 3x3 Eyes. So 3x3 Eyes, that was another game that they covered some issues back. It ended up being only in Japan, but yeah, Lunar, just beautiful game. So many great memories of this game here. I remember this boss right here with these 4 dog-looking things. I remember they gave me a hard time. Yeah, good stuff. But Joe and Mac. So this was a port from a Super Nintendo game, which I believe was it a coin-up game? But I remember I never played this game, and I didn't have too much interest. I mean, maybe it is fun, I'm not sure. But I do remember being impressed with the graphics, though, because they were really colorful and looks pretty close to what the Super Nintendo game was. Yeah, so just look at that T-Rex down there. I mean, obviously the graphics are kind of like colorful, like and cartoony, like, but it looks pretty good though. And then the Ronald McDonald's Treasure Land game here. Another really colorful game. This game ended up being, well, actually, never mind. I was going to say how this game, well, I'll just say that this game and Gunstar Heroes, Treasure's next major game for the Genesis, kind of ended up being a combination of both. But we'll get into that next year, I think, when the game comes out. Zool, I remember this game being everywhere, but you're like a little ninja dude, I think. Never did play this one, though. But it had a lot of ports, like on this Genesis, Super Nintendo, I think maybe the handhelds, I'm not sure. And I think even the Jaguar. Virtual Racing. So one of the most anticipated Genesis games ever has got to be Virtual Racing. Not only is it one of the biggest arcade drivers ever, but it is also the first Genesis card to use the Sega's DSP, the incredible new chip that makes the amazing achievement possible. The first DSP offering will run consumers in the neighborhood of $100. However, Sega plans to release a standalone DSP module, which houses the DSP in the future for around $50. This will bring the card price down to current standards. What this chip can do is truly amazing. When you see virtual racing for the first time, you may not believe your eyes. For example, if you ran the coin op and the cart side by side and stood back about 5 feet, you couldn't tell the difference. It's that good. So what's next, you ask? So far, we know of a sports title, a tank sim, and virtual fighters. So for the year prior to the Saturn, Sega will continue to dazzle us with the Genesis, a system that has turned out to be much more than anyone ever thought, and is destined to become a hardware legend. Just between you and me, with the DSP, the Genesis blows away the Sega CD, a system that will never match up to its hype. Virtual racing will be available in March 1994. E-Storm, you were talking up the Sega CD not too long ago. Now you're basically, saying that it's basically a flop, which it kind of was. But yeah, the comparison that he does about standing 5 feet back and you can't tell the difference. No, you can tell the difference. It's basically virtual racing on the Genesis. It was an achievement. It was, and actually I feel it was more of a ambitious project than, say, the Star Fox on the Super Nintendo. Virtual racing on the Sega Genesis, it is impressive what they were able to pull off. It really is, and it's very playable. But the frame rate is pretty choppy. It's running like at maybe 20 frames per second. What the arcade was, I think, a much more smoother 30 frames per second. It might have ran at 60. I'm not quite sure, but the arcade definitely looks better. But it was still impressive though what they were able to pull off on that cart. I remember renting the game back then, and we were pretty impressed with what we were seeing on a cartridge, and that's what's on a 16-bit hardware, right? It truly was impressive. And so here we go with this High Seeks Havoc game. Let's see, I'll just read this review here. So it would seem that nearly every company is developing, or at least developed, a game to compete in that also lofty genre of small character action games with Mario and Sonic. Let's see, there's Bubsy, James Pond, Sparkster, Rocky Rodent, Ariel the Acrobat, Socket, Spot, Awesome Possum, and now Havoc. Data East's new character who stars in this all-new adventure, High Seas Havoc. Some of these games totally measure up, and some will go on to see huge success and countless sequels, while others never really seem to catch on for one reason or another. I would have to say that Havoc will no doubt be among the successful, as this game puts enough new with a tried and true formula, older formula to successfully deliver a unique feel all of its own. So what's new, you ask? First, there is the character himself. Havoc moves fluidly and possesses extra animations that is so necessary for a character to succeed in today's market, such as balancing on the ledge, getting impatient, getting hurt, or executing moves like jumping, landing, and rolling. Second, there are the graphics, both in the characters and the levels themselves, and the control. The artwork in High Seas is excellent and with highly detailed backgrounds, foregrounds, enemies, and bosses. The color is also excellent. As with Sonic, you never get the feeling that more color is needed. When used properly, 64 colors looks pretty impressive. The control in High Seas is also very good. It's easy to just exit a level, but the best gamers can find platformers in the sky where power-ups are plentiful, and hidden stuff on the ground, as many walls aren't necessarily dead ends. Diversity is also important, and you'll find that here as well. Each level comes with totally new graphics and require a variation of player skills, so you won't find yourself getting bored. In fact, as far as difficulty goes, I would have to call this hard. You will need to memorize a series of patterns in the later levels to make it to the bosses, and then the fun really starts. The bosses in Havoc are excellent and never repeat. And finally, High Six has good music and excellent samples. Other extra features include bouncing on drums, a mid-air attack, and great opening sequence. From beginning to end, this is a solid package with everything it takes to succeed in this great genre. I'm quite sure that many sequels will follow. Well, that never ended up happening, but yeah, I like it. Like I said, High Seas Havoc is a game that I just have a soft spot for. I just remember having a lot of fun with this game when I was a kid. Soldiers of Fortune. Again, a game that I do want to try out here soon. And Blades of Vengeance. I never did play this game, but this is when EA Electronic Arts was doing not just sports games, but a lot of like platformers, action games. You know, they were experimenting, and some of the stuff was kind of decent. So I guess I'd be curious to see what this game's all about. I know it was like a medieval hack and slash game of some sort, but never actually played it though. Chester Cheetah, you know, one of those licensed games that might have been good, might have not been. I'm not sure. James Pond. So this game actually ended up, or this series, there's actually a few different games on this for this character here. Again, it was from Electronic Arts. And the Lost Vikings. So it was more popular on the Super Nintendo, but Genesis did get a port of it though. Kind of a puzzle game where you're these three Vikings, each has their own unique abilities with some oddly cool techno music. Brutal came out on the Sega CD. They say they'll have more of this next month, but I've played this game and it's just not very good. Sega previews. Oh, that's kind of upside down there, or sideways, I mean, but yeah, it looks like some stuff for the Sega CD and Bubsy 2, I believe. Yeah, RoboCop 3. But then here's Vase. So this is the RPG that they were talking about that was going to come out after Lunar, and because it was being published also by Working Designs. I haven't played much of this game. I did play it a little bit, and it's fine. It's decent. But doesn't seem like it's on the level of something like Lunar. But it seems okay though. Strangely, you can buy this game on the Apple Store, like on an iPad. I came across it one day on there. I was like, "Oh, Vay of all games." That seemed kind of odd, but yep, there's an official version there. From what I can tell, it plays okay. But Panorama Cotton. So this game, I remember, was interesting in that it had some pretty cool 3D effects. Almost looks like a Space Harrier almost. I'd be curious to play more of this just to check out the graphics. Shining Force 2. So I beat part 1 recently. Been kind of thinking about getting into this one here. I've kind of heard mixed things on this one. Like some people think it's like a really great game, the best in the series, where other people think like it's not quite as good. I'm curious to see what people, just if you have any thoughts on this game, I'd be interested to hear them. Is it worth playing through? I really love part 3, but this is kind of one that's sort of, for me personally, kind of fell under the radar, even though I know, like I said, that a lot of people really loved it. But I guess I'd just be curious to hear more about this game. Awesome Possum kicks Dr. Machino's butt. I'm going to clean up this world yet. Yeah. All right, E-Storms import update. So again, looks like they scanned it kind of sideways, but yeah. So here was like this F1 game on the Sega CD, which came out. I mean, it runs pretty decently. Phantasy Star 4, Castlevania. So they have a lot of pictures of that. And I believe this game is called Troubleshooter. But then an advertisement for Socket. and Rock and Roll Racing, which we talked about a few issues back. Great game. Cliffhanger. Mega Man X. So I know this game is really beloved by a lot of people in the Mega Man community. Um, I've never haven't played it really too much, so I do want to try to get into this game. I'm still kind of a new Mega Man fan, where I've beaten part 1 and 2, and I've played a little bit of some of the other games, just not to the point where I've beaten them. And so this one I do want to try to get into at some point, because I know it's known as to be one of the better Mega Man games. The for one, I mean, I really enjoyed 1 and 2. A little bit that I played of Mega Man X, they do seem cool. Like, they do seem more action oriented from what I can gather. Because Mega Man X4 is another one that I kind of got into as well too, and I really like that one. Um, but yeah, definitely a game that I that's in my backlog that I do want to play. Instead of just a game in the backlog that I'm like, meh, well, I'll get to it when I get to it. This is one that I do really feel like I need to put some time into. Now they had quite a bit of a spread on it. Chester Cheetah, also on the Super Nintendo. And Super Battle Tank 2. I'm assuming this uses Mode 7. Fatal Fury 2, which was a pretty good port on the Super Nintendo. And you can actually play Fatal Fury 2 in like I believe, I could be wrong, but also kind of like a sort of like a championship edition version of Fatal Fury 2 also. Both of them which are on the Nintendo Switch Online that came out somewhat recently. But there's some screenshots there of it. And then the Lawnmower Man, I believe, which also has like mode 7, maybe. I don't know. It had like some kind of a 3D effects to it, like when you're in these kind of levels. I've never seen the movie, but just I guess it seems like it has an interesting concept. I'd be curious to see. It has something to do like with get sucked into like a computer world of some sort. Maybe kind of like Tron. I don't know. I know it was like a Stephen King story, right? I believe. But yeah, Terminator 2, the arcade game. Lesser the Unlikely. Lufia. Tato. Okay, yeah, so Tato made this game. They were more known for like more arcade style games, but they looks like they got into the RPG genre with this one. Clay Fighters. Pack Attack. And Super Nintendo previews there. It looks like we're getting previews there of NBA Jam, which would be pretty good ports that came out for the home systems like Super Nintendo and the Genesis. And for imports, looks like there's Dragon Ball Z game and some other stuff there. And for some reason, those pages looks like they got scanned sideways. And advertisement for the Secret of Mana. Well, that's a big advertisement. That's what 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. Wow. Battlemaster, Sword Maniac, and Illusion of Gaia. This is one that I've always wanted to play here. Seems like it's a pretty cool action RPG made by NX. But yeah, but I don't know. Just always seems like a cool game to play. and the Ninja Warriors. Yeah, this game is. I'd be really curious to play through this game all the way through. There's an updated version that came out for the more modern consoles, well, at least on the Switch, and I believe on the PlayStation 4, maybe the Xbox, I don't know. But it's kind of like an updated version of this game. But yeah, I mean, it seems really cool, and I'd be curious to go through this game also. Again, I don't know why the came out kind of rotated there, but then we got R-Type 3, the third Lightning. I've only beaten the first R-Type game. I haven't. Well, no, there was also the one on the PlayStation that I kind of got in. The PlayStation 2. Wow, what was the name of it? R-Type Final? I think that's what it was called. But it was on the PlayStation 2. And that one I kind of got into also a bit. But other than that, I never really got into the other R-Type games, like the ones on the Super Nintendo, or the more recent ones too also. They seem pretty cool, but just, again, just something I never got into. And so then we get into the sports section here. This game here, because this is where they really started revamping more well, I guess it was the previous 1993, I think, is where they really started revamping this game. But this game, then this version here, kind of did a bit more of an overhaul, and this version here started becoming really competitive with the Madden games to an extent. And I remember we rented this game here, and I really had a fun time with it. Um, I'd have to try to go back to it and play it just to and compare the two to see which one I end up preferring, like the Madden games or the Montana games. But like I said, I just remember having a really fun time with the Montana games. So first we were into Madden, right, and all. Then we ended up moving over to this series here for a bit, because this one here in particular, and I think it was based off of this review or preview here or whatever, that kind of sold us on the game. And the characters just started, they got more of a realistic look. I still had the sports talk on it, which it's, I still feel like that was a really impressive how they did that on a cartridge, where it more or less keeps up with the game, what's going on the game, and just how much the announcer has to say. And granted, it does get a little monotonous after a while hearing it over and over, but it's still pretty cool though. I was impressed with how they did that. Let's see. Oh, then here's a advertisement for FIFA Soccer. Really got into this game. Well, more the Sega CD version, but we rented this game and we really liked it a lot. And then when we found out that there was a CD version coming out, we got that one, which is more or less the same thing, just with better sound, really. Maybe a few gameplay tweaks here and there, but yeah, but this for a first time game that came out, FIFA. Yeah, I mean, FIFA is huge now, right? What's called like what FC now. But basically the soccer series from EA Games has just been huge, and yeah, this is kind of where it started here. And yeah, this was a really fun game. There was a lot of sports games that would come out this year, and eventually, I mean, the EA sports games just generally ended up being the better ones. Um, I mean, there was some other games that could still compete, like for example, Montana football games and such. But for the most part, after a while, it ended up being just a Madden. It ended up being just a FIFA games, and well, now FC. And then for basketball, EA did lose some ground on that to 2K after a while, but more recent times. But for a while there, though, it was just mainly the EA games were just going to be the better ones. Or if not the better ones, still a very good game. But like for basketball, I mean, like Tecmo was still doing pretty good, right? For some of their sports games, like this one here. Greatest Heavyweights. So this is like a sequel to that Evander Holyfield game. These games were fun. Bill Walsh College Football. Yeah, if you're in college football, these were pretty great games too. Also, Oh yeah, this is a Sega CD version too, which just had like full motion videos and a few extra perks, but nothing too crazy. And then there was this Montana game here for the Sega CD, which wasn't that great. I mean, I played it on emulation, and I mean the scaling and all, it's actually kind of impressive, but it just doesn't play very well. NHL '94, so pretty much the same thing, just like the added full motion video and all that the Sega CD can do, and better sound, but nothing too much. Yeah, but there's this Montana football game. Some tips there on another football game. I mean, a lot of sports games. There was, I mean, that's why it looks like. I mean, they had to dedicate just a section to sports, just because there was just a lot of them that were coming out back then. Tecmo Super Bowl. Yeah, I mean, these games were fun. I mean, even Capcom had a football game. Looks like it was okay, I guess, at best. Monday Night Football. I mean, like I said, that was just everyone was just. This is from Data East. Oh yeah, sports. There was just a whole lot more variety, for better or worse, right? But there was just a lot of variety in sports games back then. Yeah, but this advertisement for the Mutant League Football. These games were total, just a lot of fun. Too bad his foot was out of bounds. That's great. Coming soon, Mutant League Hockey. Yeah, both part one and two were just, or I'm sorry, the Mutant League Football and Hockey were just a good time. Really fun games. And Sports Talk's baseball. So then now they started to take that Sports Talk technology and apply it to their baseball game from Sega. I've never played this game, but Sega ended up having just a really good baseball game lineup too, because it kind of started with this one, and then eventually what ended up becoming I think it was called the World Series baseball game lineup. I think it came out maybe next year. I could be wrong, but I just know that for a good stretch there, Sega had just like the best, what was considered by many the best baseball game. Um, but here's Madden 3DO. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this is the game I was talking about. Yeah, World Series baseball. Yeah. Yeah, Sega. I mean, that's I think it's people kind of know the Sega Genesis to be the good sports game console, and while not that the Super Nintendo didn't have good sports games, but it was just kind of more the Sega Genesis where you wanted to be out for good sports games, because they had all the EA games, the sports games. A lot of them even played a bit. In many cases, they played better on the Genesis, and then Sega's own sports lineup was pretty good too, also in many cases too. So. Um, yeah, just Sega was a place to be at for sports games. But then we go into the Jaguar. So here we got Trevor McFur and the Crescent Galaxy. I remember the graphics look really impressive on this back then, but so this is another game that's on that Atari compilation that I talked about earlier. When I played it on there, the graphics kind of look like almost like those low res JPEGs, that you find online. So not too impressive nowadays, but it plays okay. I mean, it's kind of a generic shooter, but back then I remember I thought this looked amazing though. Okay, so let me let's see. I'm just kind of scrolling. Uh, See, I'm just kind of going through a few here. Okay, all right. So let me just read this to you, okay? Because then I have a little story to say afterwards, which I've already kind of talked about a little bit earlier. But so Cybermorph, right? Okay. Um, so after braving the stormy skies of New York City, Kid Fan emerged with the first Atari Jaguar awarded to a game publication. After ripping open the FedEx box, we all gathered around the first 64-bit game system and plunked in Cybermorph. I got to play. 24 hours later, long after everyone else except for my trusty Quadra operator had left, I emerged totally fulfilled with the strange feeling that after playing video games for 9 years, I had just played the first real one. No longer am I tied down to from going to point A to B. I could go anywhere, anytime, and interact with crafts and characters all over the 50 planets for as long as I wanted. After rescuing my allotment of pods, I can survey the world, taking out remaining enemies, playing with different viewpoints, and examining structures. Each level is a different type of rescue mission, requiring a completely new strategy than the last. Some moons are totally hostile, while others require intense exploration and passive gameplay. I played for 3 hours to complete the first 8 moons, then surprisingly met a boss on the ninth. At that point, I'm used to 16-bit games. I figured it was over, but I was wrong. 8 more appeared that required massive study to conquer. Then then another 12 hours of engulfing gameplay, I reached the end once again. Fought 2 huge gunships and figured for sure that was it. Again, I was wrong. 8 more planets appeared that I still, 2 days later, studying it, turns out that there are 50 planets, making this game one that doesn't even nick the hardware the longest I have played. All 3D, all rendered on the fly, filled with vivid, brilliant colors and detailed polygonal enemies, and that seem aware of my presence. I am thrilled with this game. So now, for me, the face of gaming has totally changed. Now I must imagine games like this that make use of the Jag's full potential. Texture map, rendering on the fly, RPGs are now possible. Games with huge worlds to explore are on the horizon. Action, shooting, role-playing, adventure. The Jag will have it all. No putt, no bird's life, just solid, inventive 64-bit games from programmers with imagination. This game was made by ATO. Who's ATO? Or ATD? Whoever they are, they sure know how to make games. They got inside my head, and that's all it's all about. Will everyone who plays feel as I do? Probably not. There are those, I've met already some, who will turn it on, fly to a planet, and think they're playing another shooter, die for sure, and exclaim, "This is 64 bits?" To those boneheads, I must say, you have to look deeper than that. This is the first game. It was probably started before the 64-bit processor housed inside was even invented. Look at the creativity, the sound, the intelligence. Cybermorph has great music in the intro, but the game itself whispers only the surreal sounds of each planet. The sounds of the approaching missiles, the rumbling of approaching transport vehicles, and the hum of your thrusters. That's all you hear. And rightfully so. The music would only interfere. In closing, I can only say that with the Jaguar, Atari has won our support. The new machine is made here is the highest quality I've ever seen so far and looks fantastic. Support, they will have it because we will own the system. At least most of our readers will. And you guys alone can spell success for a new system. Atari is back. Come pet the cat. Okay, so I don't know how true this is, and I don't know if it's this particular review and all, but there was some information that's out there on the internet. So again, regarding this magazine here, and so when I started off, what I love about this magazine is just how very just how wild it was. And there's there's a lot of cool stories or funny stories regarding this magazine. But supposedly when this review was written, that the writer or somebody that made the layout to this or whoever was involved in this particular review, that they were high on LSD, something like that. Because I mean, I'm reading this, and Cybermorph, like I said, it's a pretty horrible game. And I mean, I like I said, in their defense, I can't understand at the time, right? Because kind of he actually does make a somewhat of a point here where he's starting to talk about how, so like right here. So RPGs are now possible games with huge worlds to explore on the horizon. Action, shooting, role playing, adventure. Now he's like really specifying that it's it's going to be on the Jaguar and all that. So I mean, not quite to that extent, but I kind of get the sentiment because I do recall playing like these 3D worlds, right, and these really basic kind of games that had 3D spaces, and immediately thinking like, what would RPGs look like a big action adventure game and all. It took years to get to the point, right, where we could really be satisfied with a lot of the 3D worlds that they were creating. We kind of started with like Super Mario 64, Tomb Raider and all, and then into later generations. But I think he was onto something as far as that goes, right, where it's like it really expanded your imagination that you can go anywhere. Now, that's kind of it's a very common thing nowadays, right, with open world gaming and all that. But again, at that time, it was just mind blowing to think about what these games could be like. And so yeah, but that's what I saw though in this one documentary that was made about GameFan, that this review was supposedly written by someone that ended up being on LSD. I don't know, again, I don't know the true validity of that. I just think that'd be kind of hilarious, and it kind of seems to make sense because it's like, I've been under the influence sometimes before in my past, and I remember playing a certain game thinking it was like the coolest shit ever, and but then afterwards I was like, yeah, that was more maybe the alcohol talking or whatever. Right. So that's why I think it's funny if that's really the case. Again, I don't know for sure, but the I think that's kind of legendary though, that if that really was the case for this game Cybermorph. I just think it's funny, but yeah, just not a very good game. And then this green face right here, where it's constantly saying, "Where did you learn to fly? Where did you learn to fly?" It's just hell of annoying. Yeah, Cybermorph. Yeah, interesting review. But yeah, there you go. Let's see. So Splatterhouse 3, advertisement for it there. Then this Mad Dog McCree game. HD Thunderstrike, which is still a great game. I'm going to try to hype that game up as much as I can. And the 3DO. So the 3DO was starting to become a thing here that was coming out soon, or if it hadn't already. Let's see. So it looks like some games you can play there. So they were starting to show off Road Rash, which Road Rash ended up becoming one of the better games on the system. But yeah, let's see. What is this? Lost Dimension? Flash Hivers. Was this on the PC Engine or was this on the? Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, because I think they were coming out with their 32-bit system also. But here is Dracula X, or as we know it again, Rondo of Blood. So Dracula X by Konami for the PC Engine CD is without a doubt the best PC Engine CD game ever made. Now that I've made it that clear, let me tell you about a game that could have saved the duo and one that no action gamer should be without. This CD is gaming at its best. From beginning to end, this is all kind of game that got us. This is the kind of game that got us into gaming in the first place. The game starts out with a cool animated intro, as do most PC Engine CDs, and then after entering your name, it's off to stage 0, where again you will be challenged by the Prince of Darkness, Nosferatu, Dracula. Unlike many of today's 16-bit arcade-style action games, Dracula X is challenging, reminiscent of those great old NES games. You don't just walk through the levels, you study patterns, experiment with different weapons, and search for secret paths. Each level has at least 2 ways to go, each ending at a different boss. Once you find Maria, you can choose her in the character select. Certain levels are much easier with her added jumping skills. The music in X is absolutely phenomenal, with tunes from the Super NES version plus all new tunes and effects that set the mood of the game perfectly. The game is a masterpiece, and after beating X, you will find yourself going back to it over and over. There's so much more to explore every time you play. You'll find something new. So if you own a Duo and cares if there's no American game, and who cares if there's no American games, you've got imports to buy. The Turbo CD lives on. Eastern. Yeah, great game. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's quite my favorite like action Castlevania game. So this is still before they really started going into the Metroidvania style, but it's definitely great. Great game. The branching paths that it has Definitely ups up the replayability value. Great music. I mean, it's definitely some of the best Castlevania music that I've heard. That was really helped by it being on CD. And if anything, like I said, it's also the prequel to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. So if you want to kind of, I mean, there's nothing too complex or involving with the stories, but if you wanted to know like what happened, if you really like Castlevania Symphony of the Night and if you never played this one, it's worth playing just again so you get more of the context of what goes on in the second game. Ooh, the Amiga CD32. They haven't really talked too much about this, but here's a game for it, James Pond. And also some other stuff there. What is this? Yeah, so this system didn't, obviously get too much steam, but it was, there were the early pioneers, right? So it was the Marty FM Towns Marty, the Amiga CD32, the 3DO, the Jaguar. They were the ones that were the start of the fifth generation. Here's that Pyramid Patrol game also for that laser CD interactive thing. The Graveyard, Game Ground. I've never have played Game Ground, but people always seem to talk really highly about it. Oh. Lufia. And advertisements. And for quarter crunchers, we're starting to show off Mortal Kombat 2. It hurt so good they had to come back for seconds. Armed with 12 deadly combatants, advanced color graphics, and a killer digital compression sound system, Mortal Kombat 2 crosses the threshold of pain to a dazzling martial arts battleground. Choose from Johnny Cage, Liu Kang, Scorpion, Raiden, or others, or even the dreaded Shang Tsung, or check out the host of new challengers, complete with all new moves and fatalities. This game stole the show. Mortal Kombat 2 has to be experienced to be believed. We'll bring you more in-depth coverage in the next issue of GameFan. Until then, stay close to the arcade. Mortal Kombat 2 should be arriving for play by the time you read this. Yeah, Mortal Kombat 2 was a big deal when it came out. And then here we're looking at stuff like from Namco, so like Ridge Racer and some other 3D stuff there. And Virtua Fighter also. I mean, it's early 3D stuff, but they would definitely draw crowds, though. It was just impressive to see that stuff back then. When we've just been so used to like more just sprites. 2D sprites, I guess I should say. But the Game Gear, I know that they had a lot of like cool like Disney kind of games, like this one here. I've heard a lot that they're pretty fun. Just never really got into them. Little Carnage. Here's a Japan Now section. So I'm not sure how clear that looks there on the screen, but I'll leave it up there for a bit if you wanted to pause and read. But yeah, so some of the stuff I believe coming out for the Turbo CD, like Strider, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's what that is there. But another interview was Yuzo Koshiro. I think they interviewed him in a previous issue. But yeah, he's the man when it comes to like music from the 16-bit days. Yeah, good stuff. And some most wanted information there. Yeah, I remember a lot of companies were coming out with like these kind of heavy duty control sticks back then. And more advertisement stuff. And then we get to the other stuff here. So let's see. So I'll just try to. So hopefully there you've kind of caught on to some information there. But let's see. I'm just gonna try to scan through here, see if there's anything really worth talking about. So talking about Mortal Kombat 2 coming out, and the Mortal Kombat movie, which didn't end up coming out. Well, that would have been in 1995. So still a little ways away from this, but it was getting there. So let's see. Now onto the world of Nintendo. So they're starting to talk about here again about the Nintendo 64, which was Project Reality. So this I always find kind of fascinating, right? And just as they were talking about some of these old systems, but when they were still rumors at the time, or not rumors, but just we didn't know a whole lot. But basically, the information that was out here was so starting here. So the 64-bit Nintendo development systems are almost complete. Just recently, at Silicon Graphics in San Francisco, engineers from Nintendo of Japan got together with engineers from SGI, and word has it that the actual hardware will be finished by the middle of January. We're told that the 64-bit CPU inside Project Reality will be a custom version of the R4000 and the R4400, which is a 150 megahertz chip. This final chip will be a combination of both and even more powerful than we mentioned before. As far as games goes, we're told that Nintendo will be announcing their first licensees at the January CES, who are currently developing games for the Project Reality under Nintendo's label. Project Reality is still 2 years away. FX Tracks, the second Nintendo Super FX game, is nearing completion and should be ready for release sometime in February of 1994. Nintendo is considering changing the name to Trick Tracks. I wonder why. The third Super FX game, rumored to be Star Fox 2, could be shown behind closed doors at the January show. Coming out of January of 1995 will be a beta Super NES version of Kid Icarus, one of the all-time 8-bit classics. Our sources say this game will be 24 megabit and be better than the original in almost every way. I would hope so. Speaking of classics, Metroid, the 24 Mega Monster by Nintendo, is 90% complete and will be available March of 1994. And yes, that was an amazing game. Okay. But yeah, here's some of the stuff that they were showing off as far as like the Silicon graphics. And so there it kind of goes over like some of the specs of what, I don't know how accurate some of this stuff still is. But this is what was, at least according to this magazine here, how they were stacking up all the different 5th generation systems that were coming out. So interesting stuff there. And more ads. And then you get the Postmeister section. It always trips me out, like, because I remember back then that's how you would get your voice across. If you wrote a letter to a magazine, wait to see if it even got published, and then if it did, wait like a month or two or so till someone replied back, and that was really it, right? Where now, I mean, so much instant ways we can communicate, right, with like social media and just so many comments on videos and things like that, right? But just interesting to look back at that. And some more ads and some third-party accessories and controls there. And more ads. Oh. And ending with the excellent advertisement of Formula One. Definitely check this game out if you're into retro racers. But that's what I got for this one here. This was a new way of doing this. I try to do this on my iPad, which is, obviously a bigger screen. And I bought this attachment to hook up my microphone to it, as, because the iPad uses the lightning connection or whatever it's called. But I tried it out and it didn't work, so I'm still using this on my phone here as I'm using this screen recording app. So some of the things looked a little small on my screen here, and so that's why I had to zoom in and out as it looks a little bit blurry. So hopefully it wasn't too bad, and I'll kind of, once I upload it and all, and test out to see if this is some direction that it seems to be working the best. I might stick with this, or maybe go a different route, or I might try to buy like different adapters for my iPad to try to get that to work. But otherwise, hope you enjoyed this, and I definitely would appreciate any feedback if there's any out there, and to try to see what might work best to try to preserve as much as I can in my own way. Just a bit of video game history here as we look back at this magazine here, Gamefan. Eventually, I might try to branch out to do some of the other magazines as well too. I just think that these magazines were very much a portal back in time to that, in video games, what was going on during that time frame, that I think it's, with print media just not being so much of a thing anymore, that I just think it's important to highlight some of the stuff from back then. There's actually a really good documentary that I saw that came out recently that the guy from GameSack and also the dude from, I think, My Life in Gaming, I think it's what they did, a really excellent documentary about EGM that's definitely worth watching, so you can get a little bit of behind the scenes on what happened behind the scenes with some of the original people that were back around then on that magazine. But anyway, it's just a lot of good stuff here. So hopefully at least this provided you a bit of nostalgia, or a bit back into a look back into this time frame on what was going on in the early 90s with video gaming. But that's what I got now. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and until the next.